I'm Rose Williams, and I never thought I'd have to write these words down, but after everything that's happened, I have no other choice. I'm a single mom from Kenya, raising 2 kids, and I do everything I can to keep our lives together. Then, on February 15th, 2025, my world was turned upside down. I was driving home from work when a terrible accident happened. The doctors later told me I was clinically dead for 6 minutes and 48 seconds. But the place I visited during those minutes changed me forever. What Jesus showed me about real poverty and the hidden struggles of white people really shook me, and I feel like I need to share my experience. That February day started like any other, working 2 jobs since my husband left us 2 years earlier to provide for my kids. Life was never easy, but I managed to keep everything from falling apart. That day, after finishing my shift as a nurse at the hospital, my feet ached, and I was exhausted, but I still had to buy groceries and make dinner for my children. This was the rhythm of my life, a constant struggle to keep everything from collapsing. Around 8:30 p.m., I got into my small car. The streets of Nairobi were still busy at that hour. Traffic lights shimmered on the wet pavement from an earlier downpour. My mind raced with worries about unpaid bills, the grocery shopping I still needed to do, and my son's problems at school. I was so lost in thought that I barely noticed the car coming from the opposite direction until it was too late. There was a tremendous crash, my head snapped back, and a sharp pain shot through my chest. Then, everything went dark. A moment later, I found myself floating above my body. I saw myself slumped over the steering wheel, blood trickling down my forehead. People rushed to the scene, and the sound of sirens grew louder. I watched as paramedics pulled me from the wreckage and frantically started working on me. Right there, on the busy road, a young paramedic with kind eyes whispered prayers as he worked. Strangely, I felt no fear or pain. Instead, an overwhelming calmness enveloped me, like being cradled in a protective embrace. A soft, gentle light began to surround me, and the noise of the accident gradually faded away. I felt light, as if I was being lifted away from the chaos below. Then I saw it. A tunnel of light, unlike any brightness I had ever seen. It didn't come from a single source, but pulsed with life, radiating peace and warmth. I felt irresistibly drawn to it. I didn't resist. I knew deep down that this was exactly where I needed to go. A deep peace filled me as I moved towards the bright glow. At that moment, I was no longer afraid of dying. Ironically, I felt more alive than ever. The instant I entered the light, everything changed. The chaotic clamor of the accident vanished, leaving me in a space, bathed in a soft, golden light. This light wasn't just illumination, it was alive, pulsing gently as if breathing. The overwhelming wave of peace and love brought tears to my eyes. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. To my right, a figure began to approach. At first, the brilliance of the light obscured his face, but then he spoke. His deep, authoritative voice vibrated through my soul. "Rose, come to me." I knew instantly. It was Jesus. Even before I could see him clearly, his presence was unmistakable, powerful yet gentle, loving yet authoritative. As he drew closer, his compassionate eyes and warm smile came into sharper focus. "My daughter," he said softly, "you've been brought here for a reason." I was so overwhelmed by the holiness of his presence that I fell to my knees. He reached out, lifting me with a touch both gentle and strong, and the moment his hand met mine, every fear and burden vanished. Jesus began to walk, and I followed. We weren't on solid ground at all. It was like we were walking on pure light. As we moved, I sensed his thoughts, not through spoken words, but through a deep inner knowing. He wasn't just speaking, he was communicating directly with my soul. "You have questions," he said. "Yes, Lord," I replied, finally finding my voice. Why am I here? Why has all this happened? I asked. Jesus stopped and looked at me with a kindness that shone in his eyes. Because you have been chosen to witness what is coming and to share what you see with my people. I followed him through the tunnel of light as it began to shift and transform. It was no longer just light. It morphed into visions. I saw flashes of cities, New York, London, Nairobi, Tokyo, all vibrant and bustling, yet something was deeply wrong. I watched people wander the streets with blank, vacant expressions. Amidst towering skyscrapers, sleek cars, and designer clothes, their eyes held no spark of life. Why are they like this? I asked. They are spiritually starving, Jesus explained. They possess everything the world tells them they need. Yet their souls remain empty. As the faces became clearer, I noticed something surprising. Many of them were white. I'm confused, Lord. I always thought poverty mostly affected people of color. Jesus shook his head. Poverty of the soul knows no race. What you are witnessing is a different kind of hardship, a spiritual emptiness. They have been led to believe that wealth and status are enough, but they hunger for something deeper. Jesus then stopped walking and turned to me, his eyes filled with sadness. They have forgotten me, he said. They believe success will solve their problems, yet by cutting themselves off from me, they remain perpetually empty. I saw images of families sitting at dinner tables, parents and children glued to their phones, barely exchanging a word. I saw well-off white families in spacious homes, their hearts filled with anxiety and fear. Lord, why are they so lost? I asked. Because the enemy has blinded them, Jesus replied. They place their trust in money, status, comfort, rather than in me. Then he showed me something even more shocking. Churches filled with people who weren't truly worshipping. Their prayers sounded mechanical, their faith superficial. They know of me, but they do not truly know me, Jesus said. Coming closer, he placed a hand on my shoulder. Tell them to seek me, not the world. Tell them that true abundance comes from me, not from material possessions. I nodded, and with that, everything began to fade. Jesus' face was the last image I saw before the light disappeared completely. When Jesus first spoke, his voice resonated not just in my ears but deep within my soul. It conveyed immense authority and immeasurable love. The moment he spoke my name, I felt completely exposed, not in a way that made me ashamed, but in a way that made me feel completely known and accepted. Every hurt, every sin, every fear, he saw it all. Yet, his love remained unwavering. Rose, he repeated, his tone calm and resolute, you have been brought here for a reason. My knees trembled as I tried to comprehend why he was speaking to someone as ordinary as me, a simple, single mother from Kenya, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. My life had been a series of mistakes, broken relationships, missed opportunities, and countless regrets. But Lord, why me? I managed to ask, my voice shaking. Jesus smiled gently. Because you know suffering. You have walked through fire, and yet you have never given up. That is why I am revealing this to you. You will understand the truth behind what you are about to see. He took my hand again and began to walk. We weren't walking on solid ground, but on something that felt like air, surrounded by that soft, radiant light. His touch dispelled every fear, even as I felt the weight of the revelations he was about to share. You will witness things that may disturb you, he warned, his piercing eyes fixed on mine. But do not be afraid. What I will reveal to you will be difficult to accept, yet you must share it with others. We walked for what felt like a few minutes, though time itself seemed different there, until the light around us began to change. It got darker and colder. The mood changed, and the peace I had known started to fade. I felt a heavy presence looming, and Jesus squeezed my hand. "Don't be afraid. I'm with you." Then the visions began. The first image was of a sprawling city. It could have been New York, London, or Nairobi. It looked familiar, but strangely alien. The streets were crowded with people hurrying in different directions, but something was wrong. Their eyes were tired and dull. Some were dressed in fancy clothes coming out of expensive stores, while others sat on the sidewalk begging. The divide was unmistakable. "But there's more than just economic inequality here. Do you see it?" Jesus asked. "Yes, but I don't understand," I replied. With a raised hand, Jesus changed the vision. Now I could sense not just people's physical state, but their spiritual condition too. I saw well-dressed business people whose souls appeared withered and dark, contrasted with the impoverished individuals on the street whose spirits still glowed with light. "The world values wealth by possessions," Jesus said, "but I see the heart." Then I witnessed something even more surprising. White families lining up for food, children with gaunt faces and empty eyes, and entire white communities struggling in run-down neighborhoods. I had always believed that poverty mostly affected people of color, so I was confused. "Why are they suffering like this?" I asked. Jesus looked at me with sorrow. "Because they built their lives on sinking sand instead of solid rock. They trusted in the world's systems rather than in me. Without me, they will always be empty." I saw people clinging to their possessions as if their lives depended on them. Parents desperately tried to protect their children, but no amount of money or success could shield them from the growing unrest. "They are spiritually blind," Jesus observed. "They watch their world crumble, but they have no idea where to turn. Tell them to turn to me. I am the only unshakable foundation." His voice grew heavy with sadness. "The enemy has used comfort to blind them. Now that comfort is fading, they must choose whether to trust in me or the world." I saw white families crying out in despair, searching for answers, while others turned to Jesus, kneeling in prayer and opening their hearts for the first time in years. "Those who seek me will find peace," he declared, "but those who continue to trust in the world will remain lost." Then Jesus showed me how success itself had become a trap, especially among white communities. I saw rows of families living in beautiful homes with perfectly manicured lawns, driving fancy cars, sending their kids to the best schools, and enjoying overflowing bank accounts. Outwardly, everything seemed perfect. Yet, when I looked deeper, I saw no real peace inside those homes. Couples barely spoke at dinner, their eyes glued to their phones or TVs, while children sat in their rooms surrounded by toys and gadgets, their faces blank with emptiness. There was no connection, no joy, only a deep, desperate void. "They have traded comfort for peace," Jesus said. "They believe that accumulating more will fill the emptiness inside, but the soul cannot be nourished by material things." Then he revealed how success had become a form of slavery. I saw men working 12-hour days in corporate towers, chasing promotions and recognition, their stress and exhaustion mounting because they believed that success would finally bring them happiness. I saw women spending hours perfecting their appearance and homes for social media, smiling for the camera, only for their expressions to fall into sadness and emptiness the moment the picture was taken. "They are chasing an illusion," Jesus said. "The adversary has led them to believe that achieving success brings true happiness. Yet, with each new achievement, they end up losing more of themselves." I saw people attending church, but not for the right reasons. Some went simply to network or to keep up appearances, while others treated church like a social outing rather than a sacred encounter with God. Their prayers felt empty, and their worship was nothing more than a mechanical routine. "Your hearts have turned away from me," Jesus said with sorrow. "They have learned to rely on their own strength and achievements. Instead of putting their trust in me, they let the relentless pressure of success tear their families apart." I saw a young man sitting alone in his car after work, just overcome with tears because he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. He had everything society said he should have, a good job, a nice house, and yet he felt totally empty inside. Then I watched how success had turned into a badge of pride. I saw how wealthy people looked down on those who had less, convinced that their achievements made them better than everyone else, like they deserved more. Jesus showed me their true hearts, cold, uncaring, and totally lacking compassion. They had built their whole lives around their stuff, instead of their faith. "They have gained the world," Jesus said, "but in doing so, they have lost their souls." Then he showed me how this trick was spreading everywhere. Social media, ads, and our whole culture were pushing this lie that success automatically equals happiness. But no matter how much stuff people got, that empty feeling stuck around. "They are spiritually starving," Jesus said, "and they don't even realize it." Then he showed me another side of this trick, the deep divides between races. I saw how the enemy had used race as a weapon to create hate and keep people apart. I saw white communities separated from black and mixed-race neighborhoods, each one suspicious of the other. A dark cloud of fear, resentment, and misunderstanding hung between them. Jesus then took me to a busy city where white and black families lived next to each other but hardly ever spoke. Even when their kids went to the same schools, there was this unspoken tension. I saw white parents pull their kids away from playgrounds the moment black children arrived, and young black kids being left out of birthday parties and neighborhood get-togethers. "They have allowed the enemy to divide them," Jesus said, "but in my kingdom there is no division." Then, with a heavy heart, he showed me how this separation had even crept into the church. In the same neighborhoods, white and black churches existed in their own separate bubbles, rarely interacting, even though they worshipped the same God. "Division is the enemy's playground," Jesus said. "As long as my people stay divided, they will stay weak." He revealed how bitterness had festered over generations, exposing deep wounds caused by racism, injustice, and inequality, wounds that never really healed. And yet, instead of trying to come together, people let that resentment take root in their hearts. "Forgiveness is the key," Jesus declared, "not because we should forget the injustice, but because bitterness poisons the soul." I saw firsthand how unforgiveness had hardened hearts. White communities clinging to pride and a sense of being better, while black communities held on to anger and distrust. This division had become spiritual. "They have forgotten that you are all my children," Jesus reminded me. He explained that unity can't be forced through politics or social programs, but can only come through him. Then he gave me a glimpse of what could be if unity was restored. I saw white and black families praying together, supporting each other, and sharing meals. Churches opened their doors to everyone, no matter their race or background. The bright light of love and understanding began to spread, and the heavy darkness of division slowly lifted. "This is what the enemy fears most," Jesus said. "When my people unite, they become unstoppable." Yet, even as he revealed the beauty of unity, his expression turned serious. "But the enemy will not give up his hold easily," he warned. In an instant, the scene changed. I saw cities plunged into chaos, protests, violence, and total confusion everywhere. People were fighting over food, shelter, and safety. I saw governments collapsing, economies crashing, and communities turning on each other in pure terror. What is happening? I asked. The systems of this world are failing, Jesus explained, and many will lose everything they once relied on. He showed me governments struggling to keep order as leaders introduced new measures, digital IDs, cashless economies, and centralized control systems. They promised these changes would bring peace and stability, but it was all a lie. This is how the enemy will leave his mark, Jesus said. It starts with fear, and then it moves to control. I saw people eagerly accepting these new systems, desperate for security, not realizing they were giving up their freedom. They'll think it's the answer, Jesus warned, but it's nothing but a trap. I saw families torn apart. Those who refused to obey were deprived of basic necessities. They couldn't buy food, get medical care, or educate their children. Faith will be tested, Jesus said, and many will falter, but those who stand firm will be protected. Then Jesus revealed the solution. Faith. I saw a small group of believers gathered in prayer. Surrounded by darkness, their faith formed a glowing circle of light around them. Even as the world around them crumbled, they remained safe. Faith is the only way out, Jesus declared. He showed how true faith could break the cycles of poverty and division. When people put their trust in him rather than governments or wealth, they found peace amidst the chaos. I saw people sharing food, offering support, and holding strong even when the world turned against them. They had nothing, no riches or status, but they had peace. They have chosen me, Jesus stated, and I will never forsake them. I saw that even those who had lost everything were miraculously provided for. I witnessed healings, multiplications of food, and protection from danger. It was as if the rules of this world no longer applied to them. The systems of the world will crumble, Jesus said, but my kingdom will endure. I saw people letting go of their fears and trusting completely in him. Their faces shone with peace and strength, not because they possessed material wealth, but because they knew they had him. Tell them to build their lives on me, Jesus commanded, not on money, not on governments, not on success. Faith, he explained, is the foundation that can never be shaken. Then he showed me something unforgettable. The spiritual condition of both the poor and the rich. At first, the contrast seemed strange. Although the poor and the rich lived in completely different worlds, their spiritual struggles were more alike than I had imagined. The visions began in a crowded city, where I saw homeless people lying on the streets, wrapped in blankets, their hands shaking from the cold. Their faces were gaunt and weary, yet beneath their suffering, I saw a flicker of light within their souls. Despite their lack of material wealth, many carried a quiet peace. I saw some in prayer, others helping one another and sharing what little they had. Their spirits were wounded, but not broken. You see? Jesus asked. Yes, Lord, I replied, still puzzled. Though they are poor by worldly standards, they are rich in spirit. They have learned to depend on me because they have nothing else, Jesus said, and because of this, their hearts remain open to my presence. Then the vision shifted once more. I saw spacious homes in upscale neighborhoods, white families gathered at long dining tables, overflowing with food, fathers poring over financial reports, mothers engrossed in their phones, and children playing with expensive toys. Yet, something vital was missing. Their inner light was dim. They have everything, Jesus observed, yet they are starving inside. I saw a wealthy man sitting alone in a vast office overlooking a city skyline, dressed in an expensive suit and wearing a watch that was probably worth more than most families make in a year. Yet his face was tired and empty, revealing a void that no amount of wealth or success could ever fill. He has built his life on shifting sand, Jesus said. He has trusted in riches and power, but now his spirit is withering. Then I saw another affluent family gathered in a large living room. The children were distracted by their tablets, and the parents were absorbed in their phones, physically present but emotionally disconnected. Their eyes were cold, their hearts distant. "They have gained the world," Jesus said, "but they have lost their souls." Then he showed me a wealthy man kneeling beside his bed, tears streaming down his face in prayer, his expensive suit discarded in despair. Suddenly, I saw a light begin to grow within him. "Faith," Jesus said. "Even among the wealthy, faith is the key. When they let go of their attachment to riches and turn to me, I will heal them." The vision shifted again, and I saw white and black families praying together. I saw rich and poor sitting side by side in a modest church, holding hands as they prayed, their souls shining with radiant light. "True wealth is not measured by what you possess," Jesus said. "It is measured by the state of your soul. Whoever trusts in me, whether rich or poor, will find peace." Jesus paused and turned to me, his expression a mixture of sorrow and hope, his eyes gentle but serious. I could feel the weight of the message he was about to share. "My son," he said, "the world is entering an age of profound deception and division. Many will lose their faith, many will turn away. But my people, those who truly know me, will never be forsaken." As he raised his hand, I suddenly saw the future unfold before me. I saw families on the edge of financial ruin, banks closing, and empty grocery store shelves. People lined up for food, some desperate, others angry, as governments tried and failed to restore order. In the middle of the chaos, fear gripped communities and people turned against each other. "But look," Jesus said, "in the heart of this turmoil, I see a small group gathered in prayer. They had little. Some had lost everything, yet their faces remained peaceful as they held hands and sang hymns. Even as the world around them crumbled, a deep peace reigned. My people," Jesus whispered softly, "though you may have nothing by worldly standards, you have me, and that is enough." Then miracles began to happen. Food multiplied. The sick were healed. Families found shelter when it seemed there was none. The light around them grew brighter and brighter, and I saw angels among them, offering protection. "The enemy will use fear to control them," Jesus said, "but those who trust in me will remain unshaken." I saw churches filled with people kneeling in prayer, hands raised in worship. Those who once relied on money and success now cried out to Jesus, and he answered them. "My Spirit will be poured out in these last days," he declared. "There will be miracles, signs, and wonders, yet those clinging to worldly systems will struggle to see them." Then Jesus revealed the stark difference between those who trusted in him and those who didn't. I saw individuals who had accepted the mark. Their faces appeared normal, but their eyes were empty, their prayers mechanical, their worship lifeless. "They have handed their hearts over to the enemy," Jesus said, "but those who refuse the mark, those who choose me, will dwell in my protection." Jesus turned to me again, taking my hand. "Tell them," he said, "do not be afraid. Let them know that no matter how dark it gets, I am with them. I will never forsake you." Suddenly, I felt myself being pulled back. The light began to fade, and the vision blurred, though I could still feel Jesus' hand in mine as it slowly slipped away. "It is time for you to return," Jesus said. "But remember all that I have shown you." "Wait," I pleaded, trying to hold on. "I have so many questions." Jesus smiled gently. "What I have revealed is enough. Share it. Those who have ears to hear, let them hear." A moment later, I was back in my body. I opened my eyes and saw the ceiling of a hospital room. My mother sitting beside me with tears streaming down her face. The steady beeping of the heart monitor and the weight of the oxygen mask on my face reminded me I was alive. "She's awake!" an attending nurse cried as she rushed to the door. I could barely move. but I managed to whisper, Jesus.